Okay. Are we on now?
Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
Alan.
Yes.
You need to mute your iPad device. So whatever your other device is, you need to mute that because you have your phone on. And you also have that
Uh,
app.
Okay, my other device didn't have a microphone.
Well, it's picking up a signal.
Okay, well, let me tell you what.
It's okay.
Let me turn that off.
It's okay. We'll just mute it on our end. It's okay. We don't worry about it. We muted it on our end.
Okay. Okay, now it's gone. Okay, so I guess everyone can hear me now. Okay, we're in 1 Samuel. We're ready for chapter 13 tonight. And last week, past couple of weeks, we've learned that the era of the judges is ending, and the era of the monarchy, the era of the kings, is beginning. And as the last judge of Israel, it falls to Samuel to smooth the transition from judge to king. And so we talked a little bit about that as we were ending our lesson last week. Samuel understood that things were going to change now. There would have to be a division in power. Israel wanted a king, just like the other nations. God was giving them a king, but that king was not supposed to be like the kings of the other nations. This king was to have limits on his power, because God was still in charge, and as the prophets of Israel would learn, began with Samuel, and the prophets that followed him, was that kings like Saul and other kings that followed him were not always willing to share this power. The king had responsibility for the temporal and political leadership. The prophet, however, she represented spiritual values. The prophet served as the voice of God in keeping the kings from abusing their power, from straying from the path that God had chosen for them to follow. And we said that Samuel was supposed to smooth this transition, but as we'll find out tonight, we're going to find our first bump in the road tonight. As we begin chapter 13, we're beginning the official account of Saul's reign as king, and it begins. Let's see, did I hear someone ask a question there?
No,
okay.
I wouldn't ask anything, no.
Okay.
Alan, you're good. No one asked a question.
Okay, you got a question?
No, there was no question.
Okay. Okay, so see now. Okay, we begin chapter 13. Says Saul was 30 years old when he began to reign. When he became king, and he reigned over Israel 42 years. Now, depending on what version of the Bible you have, you may see Saul was blank years old when he began to reign, and he reigned blank and 2 years over Israel. So some versions of the Bible leave the years blank. And so you may ask, well, what's going on here? The various versions of the Bible are kind of all over the place on how to translate this verse. And the problem is the earliest, most reliable Hebrew manuscripts leave this blank, that they don't show the number of years, and no one knows why this is left blank. The ESV version, for example, leaves it blank. The RSV leaves it blank. The NIV fills in 30 years and 40 years, but they have brackets around it to indicate that this was not a part of the original manuscript. So there are a lot of problems with this verse and a lot of explanations, but I don't plan on trying to go into all those, other than to say that it's a troublesome verse for many scholars. I think the Message Bible simply says Paul was very young when he began to reign, and he reigned for many years. So they try to sidestep the issue. Then verse 2, it says Saul chose 3,000 men from Israel. 2,000 were with him at Michmash and in the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan at Gibeah in Benjamin. The rest of the men he sent back to their homes.
This day, big sister.
Do I hear a question there? Okay. So Paul, Saul had been reigning probably about 2 years now, and he was in the process of building an army. So he apparently is very selective about who he chooses. He chooses 3,000 men, and he sends the rest of them back home. I guess he's very confident in the men that he has, and of course his primary assignment from God is to fight the Philistines. He apparently is not quite ready to go out and fight them. Apparently, all he's trying to do right now is just kind of keep them in check. So he probably feels that 3,000 people is enough at this point in time. So then, verse 3 says, Jonathan attacked the Philistine outpost in Gibeah, and the Philistines heard about it. Then Saul had the trumpet blown throughout the land and said, let the Hebrews hear. So all Israel heard the news. Saul has attacked the Philistine outpost, and now Israel has become a stench to the Philistines. And the people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. So Jonathan, he takes it upon himself then to attack a Philistine outpost. Israel right now was laboring under the yoke of the Philistines. They were dominated by the Philistines, and so Jonathan is trying to make a statement here, and he attacks one of their outposts, and of course, it doesn't take long for the news to get back to the Philistine cities, and they, of course, would actually see this as an act of rebellion, and so they are preparing to put together an army and come up against Israel, so after having sent all these people back home, Saul immediately sounds a trumpet, and he's calling them back together again. He realizes now that he's going to need more than 3,000 men, and he says, "Let the Hebrews hear." Well, Hebrews is not a term that Israel usually applied to itself. That's what other people called Hebrews. So, but there were living in Israel many Canaanites, and the Philistines were their enemies too. So they were living in among the Israelites, and so this was possibly a call to them to join in the fight, either as volunteers or as mercenaries, to fight against the Philistines. So verse 5 says the Philistines assembled to fight Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 charioteers, and soldiers as numerous as the sand of the seashore. They went up and camped at Michmash, east of Bethaven. When the men of Israel saw that their situation was critical and that their army was hard pressed, they hid in caves and thickets among the rocks and in pits and cisterns, and some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. So it doesn't sound like Israel was quite ready to fight the Philistines yet. They all ran, and they deserted, and they ran to find the best hiding places they could. Not a very good beginning here.
Alan,
Yes.
this is Carol. I have a question
Yes.
before you go further.
Sure.
Could we go back to verses 3 and 4? I guess I took it a little bit differently, and that's why I just want to get it clear. When he had the trumpet blown throughout the land, you're saying it was to bring more people into this, but I took it as like where he says, so all Israel heard the news that Saul has attacked the Philistine outpost. Well, he didn't attack the Philistine outpost. His son did, Jonathan. So to me, he was taking credit for something his son did. Am I right?
Right. Well, of course, Jonathan would have been acting on behalf of Saul. And so since Saul was king, why, he gets credit or blame, I guess, for the attack of the Philistine outpost. Now, did that answer your question, Carol? Or?
Well, I took it a little bit different. I took it that the trumpet was being blown to tell people what had happened, that this Philistine outpost had been taken, and at the same time, he was taking the credit versus his son. Now, I do know that down here in my study Bible, it says that was the culture back then, but that it wasn't necessarily the right thing for him to do, to take the credit.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. See, God well, of course, the outpost was there because that was right in the middle of Israel territory,
Right.
and they had the outpost there in an effort to keep the Israelites in check, and so Jonathan was simply trying to make a statement here. We're not going to serve the Philistines any longer. He was declaring. It was his declaration of independence, I guess.
Okay, so when it says, so all Israel heard the news, Saul has attacked the Philistine, what you're basically saying is that even though physically Jonathan did it, Saul gets the credit for it.
Right, yeah, because he was a king.
Okay.
And so Jonathan would have been acting on his father's behalf in doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So the Philistines she made a show of force here. They assembled 3,000 chariots and charioteers. That was probably primarily just for show because the Israelites were up in the hills, and chariots weren't much use, in rugged terrain. They were better used out on the open plains. So they were probably just trying to shake the Israelites up a little bit, and it worked. The Israelites all turned and ran. So anyway, back to the verse 7b. Saul remained at Gilgal, and all the troops with him were quaking with fear. He waited 7 days, the time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and Saul's men began to scatter. So apparently Samuel had given Saul instructions. He said, I'll be there in 7 days. Don't start the battle without me, because first we have to offer sacrifices to God, and we have to get God's go-ahead before we go into battle against the Philistines. So Saul was not to act on his own here. He was to wait for Samuel. But Samuel didn't come when Saul expected him. Samuel said 7 days. So now we don't know if Saul waited 7 full days, but for whatever reason, Samuel didn't show up. Maybe he had a hard time getting there. Maybe the Philistines controlled all the main roads, or maybe Samuel was just testing Saul. Putting Saul to the test here to find out if he really had a heart for God here, to find out if he was really willing to wait for God, to follow God's instructions. He was perhaps waiting to see how much faith Samuel had in God. But verse 9 there says, so he said, bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings. So they were going to offer two kinds of offerings here. A burnt offering, that's where, of course, the entire animal is burned, minus the skin. And then they were going to offer fellowship offerings, and that's where everybody shared in the meat. And Saul offered up the burnt offering. Just as he finished making the offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to greet him. So immediately Samuel asked, what have you done? And Saul replied, when I saw that the men were scattering, and that you did not come at a set time, and that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor, so I felt compelled to offer the burnt offerings. So in the next verse, Samuel says, "You have acted foolishly." So, well, first of all, what do you think about this? Do you think Saul was being too presumptuous, or do you think he had valid excuses there? What do you think?
Hey, Dad.
Yes.
I think Saul was of the tribe of Benjamin, and I thought only the Levites could offer sacrifices.
Well, he probably had priests there who were actually doing it for him. I would assume, that I doubt if Saul actually physically did it himself, but he probably had the priests there to do it for him. That's just a guess. We don't know.
Alan?
Yes.
It's Carol again.
Yes.
One of the things that struck me about this was I think he was being very impatient and not really trusting, because he was told, by the way, back in the 10th chapter by Samuel that he was supposed to wait the 7 days.
Yes.
Yeah. So to me, it shows, and he's also making excuses here about why he did this.
Yes.
I feel, especially when he says, "I have not sought the Lord's favor." So it's like, what, he already knew? He's figuring God's not with him. So, so he goes ahead and does this, I think very presumptuously. And this is what's going to get him in trouble down the line, because he's going to end up doing what he wants to do in his time.
Yes.
I think that's the problem here, that he just couldn't wait. He got impatient. He didn't trust, and he went ahead and did it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I think he makes excuses for himself here. He lists all the reasons why he went ahead. The men were scattering. Samuel was running late. The Philistines are breathing down my neck now, and so he had all kinds of excuses as to why he went ahead with the offering, but I think Saul here was challenging Samuel's spiritual authority, and since Samuel was God's prophet, he was in effect challenging God's authority as well. So he was being very presumptuous in what he was doing. And if Saul was, and also I think Saul was trying to perhaps do this for the. I guess he wanted to show his men that he was doing something and not just stand there doing nothing. So he seemed to go more for the outer show here rather than for the inward conviction. Saul could simply have prayed to God. There's no reason why he couldn't have done that to seek God's favor, to seek God's guidance. If he was worried about Samuel coming late, he could have simply gone and prayed to him. It wasn't the sacrifice per se that God was interested in. It was God was interested in where is Saul's heart here. What is Saul thinking? Yes, huh?
This is an interesting situation, and I wonder how often this can creep up in our service to the Lord as well. There's some things that we do, out of like tradition, or like it becomes like a ritual to you, like, so you do it all the time, and so I'm pretty sure that in Saul's mind, this is the right thing to do. We offer the sacrifice to the Lord, and God's going to be pleased with us, and because this is what we always do. You know, and
Yeah.
I can't help but think of Matthew 15 when when Christ was pretty much going at the scribes and Pharisees and telling them, that they dishonor God and they teach others to dishonor God by not taking care of their parents. And the
Yeah.
example that Christ used was that, someone would say, well, I gave what I was going to give to them to the temple. Now giving to support the priests and to, take care of God's storehouse is the right thing to do. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they neglected something else, which was
Yes.
taking care
Yeah.
of their parents. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so,
Right.
one thing they did it, and they probably felt really, really good about it, because it's what God wanted. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so Saul's in the same situation. He's doing what God wanted. And I feel like for us as followers of Christ, we have to be able to sit back and be able to look at what we do. And then sometimes we have to make difficult situations that may
Yeah.
pull us one way, but we're used to doing something traditionally another way. So this is one of those conundrums that could show up in our own lives if we aren't careful.
Yes. Yeah. Good point, Sergio. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Anyone else? Um, so, and those some excellent points there, Joel, to kind of bring it into, into our situation today. When we sin, who or what are we likely to blame? Are we willing to take the blame for ourselves, or do we like to point fingers at others, saying, "Well, it was his or her fault because I did this"? Isn't that often a human tendency to do that? What do you think?
I think that if you lack to take responsibility, then you're not really repentative.
Yes. Right. We got to be able to. That's a good point. There, we got to be able. Should be willing to take responsibility ourselves. But that sometimes that could be hard to admit that we have done or are doing wrong, can't it?
Well,
Yeah.
I think sin by its very nature is deceiving. So when we're caught up in sin, sometimes I don't think we can see straight to even recognize where we need to take responsibility.
Okay, good. Yes.
But wouldn't you agree, if you don't take responsibility, then you can't seek forgiveness? Isn't that a part of forgiveness?
We certainly have to acknowledge what we've done, don't we? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to take responsibility for it, even though it can be hard sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. Saul was kind of facing a crisis here, wasn't he? He was, this was, he was, even though that God had helped him easily defeat the Ammonites. See, now suddenly he finds the Philistines surrounding him with 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 an army that was much better armed than his. They outnumbered his, and he was down to about 600 men, so he probably, in his mind, he had a major crisis on hand here, and we sort of get a glimpse here of just how Saul as a person went about handling a crisis. So what about us? What aspects of our faith and personality only come out under crisis circumstances? Like, how about right now with our pandemic? Have you seen your faith being tested here? Or, have you seen certain parts of your personality coming to the surface here? I guess, how has your outlook in general changed with the current crisis?
Hey, Dad, can I answer that or try?
Okay.
Well, sometimes, first I realize, why, Lord? But then I realize maybe God doesn't want to hurt anyone. Maybe it's the devil causing the coronavirus thing. Maybe it's the devil.
Yeah.
Because he always, throughout history, the devil has wanted to cause harm.
Yes. Yes. I think I've told some of you before about the journal that my great grandmother kept. She virtually all of her life, and back in 1918 to 1920, this country suffered a pandemic very similar to the one that we're going through now. Back then it was called the Spanish flu, and almost 600,000 people in this country died from it. After reading about that Spanish flu, it occurred to me, I'll bet my great grandmother said something about that in her journal, and so I went back and read it a little bit earlier today, and sure enough, she did talk about it, and she talked about how horrible it was, and the churches closed down for a while, and there were many people dying. She lived in a small rural community in Indiana, but she personally knew the 3 people who had died from it, and her husband died by the time, and he may have died from it too, but she didn't seem to be too certain about how he died. But through this all, though, she was very, she said she never lost her faith, though. She said I know that times are hard right now, but she said I know that God is going to see us through this, and I know that things are going to be okay. So, do we all feel that things are going to be okay? No one stays awake at night worrying about it.
I feel like things, it depends on what you mean by okay. I think things are going to be okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the way we want it to be. But it's going to be okay because Christ is with us. But it's not going to necessarily be how we want it to be, or it might not. To
Right.
me, it might not even ever be the same again.
Yes.
So what? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the same is not the way the Lord wanted. Where we were in history is not the way the Lord wanted it. So, but it won't be. It's a new normal.
Yes. I think this pandemic will, for better or for worse, change many things about our society. I think we'll come out on the other end a very different society.
Alan, I read today that Trump is now reconsidering Medicaid and Medicare. And he was adamantly opposed to all of that, but all of a sudden he says that he doesn't think it's fair that people don't have access to good Medicare coverage. So maybe it's even changing him, and changing the entire position of I guess, his administration. I don't know. He tends to say a lot of things that he backs off of, but that's what I read today on the internet. So
I think there'll be many things that change. Many things, yes. 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 Yeah, people, this pandemic is, it's bringing out the worst in people and it's bringing out the best in people. It works both ways. You see a lot of examples of compassion out there. You see a lot of people diving in and doing the best they can to help out in various small ways, and so people want to help, and that's good. So we'll get through this. It's just a question of it'll be interesting to see how we look on the other end.
Well, we're forming a lot of new habits. That's for sure. And one of them is good hand washing. But something that I hope will stick, I hope that sticks because I'm a germaphobe. But something else that I hope will stick is what I'm seeing as far as people being driven literally down on their knees. I'm seeing the frontline providers, the frontline warriors, getting down on their knees and praying like the hospital workers before their shifts. I'm seeing stories emerge from all over the place, but a current trend is now something I'm seeing trending right now is hospital workers taking to the roof where the helicopter pad is. And before they start their shift, and also different times during the day, they get on their knees on the roof of the hospital and pray over it.
Yes. Very good. That's right. Yes. We're washing our hands a lot more now today, aren't we? Praying over to God. And those are good things. Yes. Very good.
Alan, this is Mozilla.
Yes, Mozilla.
Years ago, about 50-some years ago, I went through the Hong Kong flu. It was a bad thing. My whole family was sick. But my mother took care of us, and she didn't get sick. But we prayed a lot, and we came through it. So you can come through this. The good and the bad going to suffer together.
Yeah.
And that's the way we have to look at it. It's not for bad people. It's for the good and the bad.
Yes.
That's the way I look at it. Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's right. Yes. This coronavirus has been around for some time now. It's come to us in various forms, and this is probably by far the worst so far. But pandemics are nothing new. We had them before, and we'll have them again. They're
I have a question.
sure.
This is Karen. For those people that were sharing things from the past, like the Spanish flu and the Hong Kong flu, my question is, what was it contagious like this? Did the country go on lockdown like we're on? Was it like that?
I don't know. Good question.
Yeah, it was bad about the Hong Kong flu. It was bad, but I never seen this, and I'm 1 year from being 90, and I never seen it before. Not this bad.
Yeah. Well, of course, in the Spanish flu back in 1918, it lasted 3 years, and there was almost 600,000 people just in this country alone who died. And I know in my great grandmother's journal, she had an entry in there for October 27th, 1918, and she and her exact words were, "See, terrible epidemic of influenza, no church services now." And so I'm not sure how long that went on, but so I'm not sure. Well, she was a farmer. So I don't know how much they did in terms of social distancing. However, I read an article in today's Sun paper that talked about. It mentioned the Spanish flu pandemic back in 1920. It was still going on in 1920, and back then Baltimore had the Orioles. They were a minor league team, and they had won the pennant that year. She lifted Baltimore's spirits, in the middle of the flu there, and none of the Orioles got the flu that year. so that's just a little tidbit I threw in there, but yeah, I think the Spanish flu was probably pretty bad though. Anyone else there?
Yeah, Alan, this is Carol. Oops, sorry.
I didn't mean. You go ahead, Carol, and I'll ask a question.
That's Brian. Okay, Alan.
Yes,
Okay. I heard what Brian said, and I sometimes I liken to what's going on to Job in the sense of, Satan saying, okay, let me do this, and he's going to do that. And God says, okay, you can do this, but you can't do that. So in that sense, it very well may be Satan who's doing this, but I also think God's allowing it. And so if you say, well, why? I'm just wondering if he's just not shaking things up. It's like maybe we all became so complacent in everything. And I agree with Karen. I don't think we're ever going to go back to quote what we think is normal. I think we're going to come out of this and there's going to be a lot of changes and a lot of different things, because this is in my lifetime, like Mazel said, in my lifetime, and I'm not quite there where she is, but I've never seen, anything like this. I don't think most people have. So, it's like, and this is worldwide. This is not just, in the United States or in one state or one city. So the way it's affecting everybody, I don't know. I've had different thoughts about it. Is it being allowed to bring people, to Christ? I know there's always going to be a segment of people who are blaming God and saying, why are you letting this happen? And you're supposed to be a loving and good God, and so forth and so on. But, maybe it just got to the point where, I'm not trying to go into his mind, but just to say, okay, enough's enough. I'm going to shake things up. And I think the other part of it is that man has been so dependent upon everything else but God many times, you know, and now it's like, guess what? All these things that you were dependent upon, whatever you might think of it, anything, it doesn't exist anymore. You can't go to the store. You can't go to the restaurant. You can't go to the theater. So what have you got left but God?
That's right.
And maybe that's exactly why some of this is happening.
That's right.
You know, Alan, the folly of the fool, the tragedy of the fool is to go through suffering and not learn and not let it teach you. You know, in philosophy, suffering is viewed as a teacher, and you know, like this concept can also be viewed in the Bible in some ways, such as like Proverbs 3:12, where it talks about the Lord disciplines those whom he loves. This idea that the Lord's discipline is an act of love from God. It's kind of similar, but I mean, even if the suffering, you know, just mere suffering has the ability to always make us or break us. No matter how you suffer, you can choose to learn from the suffering and let yourself come out on the other side a better person, a stronger creature, or you can go through the suffering and let it make you a worse human. And suffering has the ability to teach us. And one thing I find very interesting about COVID-19, that in the middle of all of this chaos and death and all of these and all this suffering, like there are people who, you know, just like Mark brought up earlier, who were against things that were compassionate acts. They were very against them, and now they're reconsidering these things. People are showing each other compassion with rent and evictions and mortgages. The government's showing compassion. They're even showing compassion to people who, non-violent offenders who were in prison, incarcerated. They're trying to find out ways to show them compassion. You know, there's compassion being shown to homeless people. The tent cities are being built. Some areas are letting homeless stay in vacant houses. Some of these things we ought to have been doing. Like some of these things we ought to have been doing. But what got in the way was, in my opinion, what got in the way was flat out greed. Greed got in the way. And so and so now humans are forced to think about what matters beyond just money. Like what matters just beyond money and beyond making as much money as possible. And I think compassion is on the loose. I am amazed with the compassion that's coming out of folks who were just, just a year ago, very strongly against some things. And now certain things are being discussed because compassion is on the loose in a mighty way. And I think the tragedy is, going back to what Karen said, is to me it would be tragic if society went back to normal. To me, that would be absolutely tragic. If society doesn't learn from this moment how to take care of one another, how to love one another, how to have a more benevolent society, how to have a more grace-filled society, how to have a system that is less brutal on the vulnerable and the dispossessed and the disinherited. If society doesn't learn those things, then society has absolutely failed, and we've missed the blessing in the midst of the suffering. I mean, I'm not trying to say like we've missed the blessing in suffering, which was what could we have learned through the suffering moment. And so I wanted to contribute that.
That would be a tragedy if we went back to life as normal. We need to, that would be a great tragedy. Yes. This is a good learning tool here. In a great pandemic, great tragedies like this, should and usually do shape the way people live and the way they think. So it'll be interesting to see what we look like on the other end of this. Hopefully, it won't last 3 years like the Spanish flu did. But we're hoping for a much shorter pandemic in this case. Okay.
Alan, just to respond to
Yeah.
something Karen said, asked earlier, one of the problems with the Spanish flu was that there wasn't a mass social distancing. There was regional social distancing, but it wasn't a widespread social distancing across the country. It wasn't as involved as it is now, and that's why some people believe that they ended up having 600,000 deaths.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
if you've been following the data, but they spoke about how some of the projections, if we did nothing, could have been 1 million or 2 million dead in America alone. So now they're saying that if we practice social distancing the best we can, there may be 100 to 200,000, and so
Yes.
Deaths which
Yes.
is still very tragic. And so one of the issues with Spanish flu was that there wasn't as much social distancing, and I'm actually shocked to hear about your grandma's journal too, about
Right.
the churches closing back then as well. So I'm actually quite floored by that.
Yeah. And they didn't have the internet back then, did they? You people couldn't work from home anymore. They couldn't. You order their food online. So the internet, I think, will have a big influence on how this current pandemic plays out, and the current pandemic will have a big influence on the internet. So it was a far different society back in 1918 than it is now. Yeah. Okay.
This is something for Lawrence and I guess everybody else. I find it interesting that, and I've always found this interesting, that many of the people who are opposed to welfare, when they are in a position where they need government help, then all of a sudden they're just sort of silent about it, and they're willing to take the help, but they're not willing to sort of give the help. So this may change some beliefs there with regard to the role of government in terms of helping people who are in need. I can't believe how many Christian groups have argued that, the government should help people. It should be the role of the church to help people. But my thinking on the matter is the church doesn't have resources necessary to sort of feed everybody or large numbers of people. And sometimes there's no other option but the government to intervene.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Very good. Okay, folks, we're out of time. So we'll take it where we left off last week about verse 13 in chapter 13, and we'll move on from there. Thank you for all your great comments tonight. They were very good. Appreciate your participation. You all help make it a good class. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the class, and we had a lot of great questions, and I think I love the responses. This pandemic thing is kind of shaking everyone, and it's caused many of us to kind of rethink things, maybe see things from a different perspective. And as we said during the class, some will get better from it, some will get worse. But overall, I hope, especially this country will be the better for this. So we look forward to continuing this conversation next week, next Thursday. But before we close out, I wanted to see if there were any prayer requests.
Yeah.